Alireza Firouzja is an absolute beast in shorter time controls, and this game is a great example of that. He just dismantles his opponent in only 15 moves. Black could resign already. Now his opponent's no slouch. This is Federico Perez Ponce, an Argentinian grandmaster. He plays as Genghis K on chess.com. This one was played last year on the 5th of April 2021. I think it was a bullet game, judging by the ratings here. Let's see what Alireza does. So he kicks off with pawn to e4. We now had pawn c5 from Genghis K, pawn to d4, and after captures here, c3 from Alireza, the so-called Smith-Morra gambit. You give that pawn if black wants it. You're going for rapid development. Great option for bullet chess here. But after this one was played to c3, instead we had knight to f6, just developing pieces, ignoring the gambit. Now Alireza kicked on to e5. The knight centralized here, and Alireza's not interested in capturing. He wants to develop pieces, so he jumps his knight out to f3. Pawn d6 now challenged the center, and neither player are interested in capturing any pawns here. Just bishop c4, hit the knight, it dropped back into b6, counter-attacking on the bishop, which then drops back into b3, keeping an eye on this sensitive f7 pawn. So the knight now developed c6, looks at those central squares, and now Alireza does capture, deals with that pressure. The queen recaptures, and he goes knight to a3 now, looking to hop into b5, maybe c4 in future. So a6 was played to cover the b5 square. Now we had castles, and here black plays really ambitiously. So a more standard kind of move here would be bishop to f5. You want to go e6 of course and get castled, but first the black bishop ideally would like to come outside the pawn chain. And after bishop to f5, say Alireza carries on the rapid development, rook to e1, now black gets e6, they can get the bishop out, they can get castled. But instead of bishop f5, we had bishop to e6. Now it makes some logical sense. This is a powerful piece, so you want to exchange it off. But already Alireza could actually capture here. After queen recaptures, he'd be doing well. The queen's a bit misplaced, running into rook to e1. But instead he goes knight to g5, another very tempting move. So instead we had the captures here, the queen recaptured, and now we see the problem for black, the fact that there's no castled king yet. The queen hits two sensitive points, knight and pawn, and that's why you can't go e6, or then you lose your knight here. So knight d5 is forced to cover both of those threats, but now white could already take on b7 with a good game. Instead, Alireza goes knight to c4 here, picks up some tempo on the queen before trying to take on b7, and black should actually cover that pawn with queen to c7 here. Now, maybe this wasn't played. Again, this is short time control chess. Perhaps black was scared of bishop f4 here. Now, it's not actually working, but if the knight takes, for example, you can see how knight to b6, hitting the rook, then opening up this threat to check here, could be in the black player's head, you know what's actually going on. In fact, black's okay after pawn to f6, because once you take here, queen a8, then you're attacking this knight, you're also attacking this knight. Better for black without going through all the details. So actually queen c7 was the best move to hold the b7 pawn. Bishop f4 is not working, but instead of playing this one, queen d8 was played, and now this is actually catastrophic. Now it doesn't look like it should be, because after queen takes on b7, rook to c8, holding the knight, well, how is white actually crashing through? And this is where I'd encourage you to pause it and look for the swashbuckling move which Alireza found. And if you are enjoying this video, do hit that like button, let me know, help me reach more people, and do subscribe to the channel to never miss a future video if you haven't done so already. So the move that was played here was knight to d6 check. Just a fantastic double exclam move. Now let's look at the pawn captures first. Why can't this be played? Well, now you're checkmating on the f7 square. That's the beautiful thing. The pawn opens up the queen. So you have to actually take with this one, but now the rook drops. This is the trick. So it drops with check. Now you can't come back with the queen, or we pick up the knight. So knight d8 was forced. And here after 16 moves, black can basically resign. A pawn down in just a moment after captures on d4, which Alireza played here, plus an exchange down, is completely lost. We did see some more moves, which I'll whiz through now, but that's the beautiful part of the game, that stunning tactic on d6 here. So how did Alireza finish it off? Well, pawn e6 was played, now the knight centralised, queen b6, and now it hopped into c5, and this starts to force a liquidation of pieces. There's threats on the d7 square, so this one was chopped, the queen took back, queen takes, pawn takes, and now we've even got a 3-on-1 on the queen side here. This is overwhelming. So the knight hit c6, bishop d2 developing, king d7, the rook came to the b file, black did likewise, and now this was a bit hasty, but it's still a winning move. Pawn to b4, it actually gives a pawn if black wants it. You can take with either knight, although then it forces liquidation. Say something like this, pawn a3, knight drops back, you can chop off here, knight takes, rook b1, and you're actually coming in down that file onto the b6 square, completely lost for black. So that's why black didn't take there, didn't want to start liquidating pieces, although you could have won that pawn. Instead, e5 was tried, securing this d4 square for the knight as an outpost. Pawn a3 now, king e6. This one came to the d file here. The knight now hit d4, and bishop e1 just tucks back, everything's secure. Soon white wants to start rolling that queenside majority. So knight e2 check, king f1, it hopped back to d4. This one now came to the c file, preparing to push the c pawn. So the knight dropped into b3, hit the rook, it came up to c4 here. Knight d4 back, there's not a lot that black can do here. And here Alireza just takes a practical decision to finish off the game. He captures on d4, gives an exchange, and now he's 2 pawns ahead with a completely one endgame. So pawn a5 played to break up the pawns, rook c4, we had an exchange here, rook a8 hit the open file, but now pawn c6. White reminds black of the issues with those pawns. The knight hopped back blockading, rook to d4, rook a6 hit the pawn, rook c4 back, king d5, now a check, king d6, and now just a tidy king safety move, pawn to f3, plus this bishop's now coming to this diagonal, looking in this direction, threatening to win a knight. So rook a1 played, pinned that bishop, king e2, rook a2 check. It marched all the way up, and Alireza's not bothered about dropping these ones. The queenside pawns will be winning it. So knight d5 was played, hits the pawn, threatens some checks. Bishop g3 check, king e6, pawn c7. This one checked here, king c4, it checks here. The king ducks away, and now these were the final moves. Yes, white loses the pawn, but after takes on c3, although black's getting that rook back, now you're just clearly lost. You're going to be a whole minor piece down if you take here, pawn's going through. So this was the final move of the game. If you enjoyed this video, then do hit that like button, leave me a comment, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you want to see another amazing Alireza game, his immortal bullet against Daniel Naroditsky, click here. Thanks for watching, see you soon.